And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, traffic accidents are up in Beverly Hills because tourists keep stepping out into the middle of the street to take selfies.
That's pretty dumb.
They want to see the palm trees in the background.
I used to live next to a home in Palm Springs that had huge pink doors. And for whatever reason, every bridezilla that was getting married decided that they would take them, their bridesmaids, their professional photographer, and a bunch of equipment and set up shop right in the middle of the street in front of this house, a house that they didn't own and didn't rent. And then they turned the front of this house into the backdrop for their photo shoot. And whenever the homeowner would come out, when they would realize what was going on, the bridezilla would let the homeowner have it because they were disrupting the photo shoot.
Of a place that they didn't rent and they don't own.
Correct. And then if you live in the neighborhood, they just take the street and they use that as their workspace. And everyone in the neighborhood was so afraid of the bridezillas that they just found alternate means of getting around. What are you going to do? Karen's in training. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, we know that the California bullet train is supposed to be completed and operational by now. But because it's California, that's just a figment of your imagination in terms of that ever becoming reality. But because that's never going to become reality, that doesn't mean that the state of California isn't still wasting a lot of your money on this fantasy project.
In fact, the California legislature just approved funding $1 billion a year for the next 20 years to high-speed rail.
Money well spent. Not.
For more on this, here's NBC in the Bay.
It's been debated, criticized, cheered, and mocked. Now there is new potential progress and new criticism regarding California's high-speed rail project. We're going to bring in our business and tech reporter, Scott Budman, with this big update. Scott.
Well, Janelle, a new funding agreement has been announced. It would help keep the proposal on track
by extending cap and trade for another 2 decades, which will keep gas prices high for another 2 decades.
Just go back and remember that entire scam. They told you that cap and trade was necessary from global warming forcing us into the ocean. And in reality, it was just an additional tax to give them a slush fund to spend on things like the high-speed rail to keep the unions happy.
Well, not only that, we saw that whole thing last year with the California Air Resources Board setting those new standards for cap and trade and increasing cap and trade fees and cap and trade rates. And what did they use that money for? Discounts for e-bikes.
And those are the bikes that are used at the mall by the little teenagers, the little bastards, to create all kinds of mischief.
But even with this proposal, potential new funding, critics of the rail program say it's time to derail what they call a train to nowhere.
You knew that was going to happen.
Of course.
After nearly being derailed by federal funding cuts, it appears California's high-speed rail program may roll once again with a new plan. That plan, about to go in front of the state legislature, would fund the project to the tune of $1 billion in state funds each year.
Which, by the way, is still nothing to what this project needs to finish.
No, and every time they do an update, every time they do a revision, it costs more. It never costs less. It always costs more. And the completion date always gets pushed farther into the future.
From 2030 to 2045. The High-Speed Rail Authority declined our request to talk.
And by the way, there's a lot of Merced people that are pissed off now because one of the ways to speed up development is to cut out Merced altogether and go straight to Gilroy after Madera.
No soup for you.
Because if you can get to Gilroy, you can kind of get to San Jose, and then you can get the Caltrain that's already electrified that goes from San Jose to San Francisco that actually a ton of people use now. Which, if they actually would have started the project there with that 15 years ago, they would have revenue and they would have people on board to do this. But if you go back in history, it was a directive from the then Obama administration that said, we got to do something about all the asthma in the Central Valley. So start this train out in the middle in Fresno and connect nothing to nothing.
You know, that was equitable.
The High-Speed Rail Authority declined our request to talk, but released a statement saying, quote, today's agreement has made a big, bold statement about California's future, one that will create jobs, cut pollution, and connect and transform communities across the state. Others are not so sure.
And by others, they mean everyone with a brain in their head.
This is a boondoggle. It's probably the most wasteful government spending program in world history. And I'm not being hyperbole there. It is that bad of a project.
Especially since this money, if approved, would help complete the 171-mile stretch in the Central Valley, but not the original San Francisco to Los Angeles proposal.
There is no plan to get through the Temecula Mountains and get through the Tehachapi Mountains. There's no plan. They don't know what exactly it is they're going to do. The same issue, they're not totally sure what they would do to get through the mountain range up in Gilroy.
How is it that they can unilaterally change all of these things when the voters voted on a specific package that they can't deliver on?
Oh, that doesn't matter anymore. I will say, the new CEO is interesting because they got him out of Europe where he's actually built a ton of these things. And he has said this is by far the hardest project he's ever had to work on because he has to work with California. And one of the ideas he has to fund this thing is to sell out all the land around the high-speed rail tracks to AI data farms because we're going to need so many storage facilities for all the data that's being collected by all that slop that AI is generating.
Okay, let that sink in for a second. This guy thinks we're more of a pain in the ass than the French.
The French built theirs a long time ago.
And the plan is already considered.
Of course, the French didn't have CEQA. We had CEQA.
And the plan is already considerably over budget.
We're nowhere close to having any rail ready to go. It's projected to be over hundreds of billions of dollars now. There's no debt. There's no.
One of the things that Ian Chaudhry, the CEO, said, well, in places like France and Japan, it's a lot easier to just take the land. Here they sue you over it.
By the way, don't give Sacramento any ideas.
Set time frame for it to be finished.
But the embattled train still has supporters, including Senator Dave Cortese of Silicon Valley, who calls the potential deal an historic victory for California high-speed rail and for everyone who has fought to see this project succeed.
He's the one that says, think of this more as a jobs program instead of a rail.
Yeah, that's something to be proud of.
And lawmakers are set to vote on the latest funding plan Saturday. Janelle?
Okay, thank you, Scott.
There's the latest on California's high-speed rail with a plan to extend the funding from the state of California's commitments for $1 billion a year for the next 20 years.
All right, let's move on from high-speed rail to the Bay Area trains, where the legislature wants to make it so we can spend more tax money on BART.
Apparently, BART's losing a ton of money. Muni's losing a ton of money. Some of the other local Bay Area transit agencies are losing a ton of money. So there is an idea that Scott Wiener had in the state Senate. Well, why don't we pass a law that allows people to collect signatures for a 5-county sales tax hike to bail out transit?
Great. More money.
For more, here's KPIX.
Live look at the state capitol tonight, where yet another bill to bail out public transportation was approved by Democrats. Republicans were uniformly against it. It's a rise in sales tax that the state in a state that already has the fourth highest tax in the nation. Passing it is ultimately up to voters in November, and Amanda Harry has this story.
For Carter Lavin, public transit is a way of life.
I use it all the time.
Lavin usually takes the bus, BART, and even the ferry, and he uses his bike to get around in between. He says all those options are necessities for those who use them and for those who don't.
Without BART, freeways are a parking lot. Without the local...
Wait, they're already a parking lot.
Yeah, don't even pretend like it's easy to get around on the freeways of California.
Without BART, freeways are a parking lot. Without the local bus...
And by the way, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be BART, and I've ridden BART. The thing is, BART is not effectively using their money wisely. When the whole system shut down and they had to have a meeting to figure out what happened, how many members of the board of directors do they have, and how much are they making every year to not pay attention to that system?
Well, I love the fact that they act like it's unfair to question all of their spending practices and all of the waste that's going on.
People are not able to get to work.
But whether or not public transit stays running and reliable is up in the air. The agencies need funding to stabilize, or Bay Area residents could see devastating cuts to services. Friday night, the California legislature passed SB 63, a bill aimed at raising and allocating funding for public transit,
which is one of the most important pieces of legislation for Bay Area transportation, our future.
State Senator Scott Wiener co-authored.
If it's so important, by the way, then why wouldn't you spend every penny wisely? Why wouldn't you say, this is too important to steal from? This is too important to tolerate graft. That's not what they do, though. They know that the public regards it as important, so that's, of course, the place that they fleece.
Well, and what happened here is what happened with so many different governmental agencies. Yes, people stopped writing because they shut everything down during COVID. And what happened then is when Biden got in office, he sent this massive bailout to governments, big and small, all throughout places like Southern California and Northern California, that included bailouts to transit agencies. And these bailouts didn't just last for the 1 or 2 years of COVID. The money they gave them was so much they had money for like 5 years. And so the budgets of all these agencies exploded. They started spending a whole bunch of money on nonsense as ridership was not coming back. And now, even though ridership is coming back, their budgets are so much bigger than they were in 2019, they don't have the money for them because the Fed stopped sending it.
They don't need more money. What they need is an Elon Musk and a Doge.
State Senator Scott Wiener co-authored the bill to try and fulfill a growing need for his constituents.
BART, Muni, Caltrain, AC Transit, they're at serious risk of major service cuts if we don't stabilize them for the long run. And so this legislation will authorize a 5-county ballot measure to raise revenue.
How much money are we spending on ambassadors on BART?
Whatever it is, it's waste.
For these systems to stabilize them. It's long overdue, and it's incredibly important.
By the way, another thing that the legislature and specifically Scott Wiener asked for from Gavin was a bridge loan so they could pay their bills right now, and Gavin didn't come through.
That's interesting because Gavin must think that by doing that, it wouldn't help him in the Democratic primary. And he either made that decision because he thinks that in places like South Carolina or Iowa or New Hampshire, they're more rural than urban. So they're not used to having access to trains. They're not used to having access to a lot of buses or subways, things of that nature. So it's not quite the priority that it is in a big blue state like California. Or maybe he knows what kind of theft is going on, and he doesn't want any association with that at all.
Those 5 counties are Alameda, Contra Costa, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara. It would be a new sales tax that would go towards the funding. The default rate is 1/2 cent. In San Francisco, it would be 1 cent to support Muni.
They got to pay twice.
Lucky them.
None of us likes to pay more taxes, but we're going to have to really explain to the voters and make the case that this is essential and that it's worth doing this, because the alternative is just not tenable.
Weiner says without the funding, BART could collapse, and Lavin agrees.
Without this funding, we're looking at 85% reduction in BART service. 85. That is.
How did this system, which has been around for quite a while, sustain itself before the pandemic?
I also want to point this out, and this doesn't just apply to this story, it applies to life in general. Anytime someone wants to negotiate with you with a gun to your head, it's usually a bad deal. Because if you can make the case that it's important and that people are reliant on it and you're spending all the dollars wisely, then you go out and you make that case. But if you say, give me this or else the hostage dies, then that's a threat. That's not a negotiation. It's a threat.
85. That is stations being closed. That is communities not having a BART. That is people uprooting their lives.
The measure still has to be approved by Governor Gavin Newsom. Then signatures need to be collected to get it on the ballot in November of 2026. Lavin says this measure could change the trajectory of Bay Area.
If it passes this fall 2026, that will provide hundreds of millions of dollars every single year.
Yeah, but will that be enough?
No. They'll be back in Sacramento with a tin cup asking for more money.
And by the way, this isn't the only thing that is going to be on the ballot in 2026 for transit. There's going to be a statewide initiative, not just the 5 Bay counties, but a statewide initiative for a $20 billion bond to also bail out the transit agencies.
Vote no on all of it.
For transit throughout the big 5 Bay Area counties for 14 years to come. So this is a long-term investment. This is this kind of foundational piece of transit funding that the Bay Area has always lacked.
So there you go. That's the plan, to have a ballot measure next year in the Bay that would have you increase your sales taxes if you want to bail out BART and Muni and Caltrain and what have you.
If we give any of these people any more money, we should have our heads examined. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Tom writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Hey, Johnny, maybe if we had one union guy fixing the bench on the train instead of 3, it might help a little.
And with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you were to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, Randy, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. Do a Google on the YouTube. Get the KABC app. Get the KSFO app. So many different ways to listen to this show. You can listen in your car. You can listen on the bus.
I love the bus driver.
Let's go to Mike in San Jose. Mike, hello.
Good afternoon. Hey, I got a couple things. The bullet train. If they don't know how they're going to get over Pacheco, how are they going to get over Pacheco Pass to bring it into Gilroy? And number 2, BART has custom tracks. Their tracks are not standard like all the other trains and buses and everything. They're a different. The distance between the rails are different, so every time they buy cars, they have to be custom built because they're the only people in the nation that have that width on their tracks. So it costs more.
Okay, I have a theory on how they're going to get the train through the Pacheco Pass. It involves Wile E. Coyote and a lot of sticks of dynamite.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. And tomorrow, Randy, if you're in the San Fernando Valley, you have an opportunity to see us in person.
Well, with this much notice, you have an opportunity to leave the Bay Area, go all the way down the 5 freeway, and make it down to the San Fernando Valley. You know, we did a remote somewhere where someone did that. When we went to Century City to Gelson's, someone in San Francisco drove all the way just to be there, and that is some dedication. I think they also had something else to do, but it was nice that they came. Join us at the Pineapple Hill in Sherman Oaks tomorrow from noon to 3. It's a live broadcast of the John Phillips Show. Pineapple Hill has great food, great drinks, a beautiful outdoor patio, and, of course, special guests will be joining us, including Susan Shelley from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. The courts have made it easier to raise your taxes. Come by and sign the petition to save Prop 13. You'll have some lunch with us. We'll take some pictures. We'll have a great Friday, and it's a Jimmy Buffett Friday, so if you want to wear a Hawaiian shirt, do it.
I think I'm going to wear a Hawaiian shirt tomorrow.
I think I'm going to wear my Robert Graham that's kind of Hawaiian-ish. I think that'll look good.
I have a couple of Angels Hawaiian shirts, and now that they've been eliminated from the playoffs, I figure, wait, what's the point of me wearing that shirt again?
Got to show some pride. Bleed that angel red.
All right. That's what I'll be wearing for tomorrow's show. So if you're in the Valley, come by and say hi. We'd love to see you. All right, just what you think. We've gone through all of the embarrassing stories involving public transit in California. Randy, we have one more to add.
So we're still trying to figure out how that meltdown happened that shut down the entire BART system a couple of weeks ago. And we're not really getting a whole lot of answers, mostly because the head of the BART directors refuses to do interviews.
How's that for transparency?
For more, here's ABC 7 in the Bay.
Now to an I-Team investigation as Sky 7 gives us a look over MacArthur BART and the station there in Oakland. The agency's executives are really on the hot seat today because this was the first.
How much are they making?
Oh, maybe not quite as much as the fake doctor, but they're making a pretty penny.
The agency's executives are really on the hot seat today because this was the first board of directors meeting since that system-wide outage on Friday.
Which, by the way, is the second one they've had just this year.
Did they hire someone from Southern California Edison to run BART?
ABC 7 News I-Team reporter Melanie Woodrow was the only television reporter at today's meeting. She's here now with the latest. And boy, there are a lot of angry people, Melanie.
There really are. General Manager Robert Powers is back from vacation, but he's not saying much to those angry people or to us. Directors fired off their critique of this most recent system-wide outage. And tonight,
this is unacceptable. Where's my check?
And don't I deserve a bonus?
one person says it was her and her team's job to make sure it didn't happen.
This event is my responsibility, and it was avoidable.
Did you get fired?
How about anyone that gave you bad advice? Did they get fired?
BART Assistant General Manager for Infrastructure Delivery, Sylvia Lamb, taking the fall for Friday's system-wide outage, the second system-wide outage in 4 months and third since 2019. According to Lamb, the planned work involving BART network engineers and an unnamed third-party vendor moving a cable from an old switch to a new switch. Within a few minutes, losing connectivity to the network, creating what she's calling a network storm.
There is no one that feels worse about this than I and my team do.
My bad.
But don't blame us. It was the Sharknado.
Directors demanding accountability given prior.
What does that mean?
It means nothing. Accountability means absolutely nothing.
Directors demanding accountability given prior system-wide network outages, regardless of the cause.
I was surprised and concerned because it happened again.
If we determine as an agency we need additional outside expertise, we will go get that outside expertise to just double down on making sure, we do not put the Bay Area in BART.
That is executive speak for we're going to hire some consultants that are going to do nothing.
Yeah, we're going to double down on stupid.
In this position again.
BART General Manager Robert Powers also addressing the August 29th Transbay Tube incident when smoke filled a train car, causing panic among passengers and halting service. BART executives saying it was a blown insulator, but they're still investigating the root cause. The ABC 7 News I-Team has been asking to speak with Powers since Friday when he was out of state on a planned vacation. So I brought my questions to the board of directors meeting.
Melanie Woodrow.
she had to speak at public comment because these people won't talk to her.
Okay, look, I like enjoying vacations as much as the next guy. And you plan your vacation way in advance, and that's when you go. However, if you're in management, you're not an on-the-line employee. You're management. And your organization experiences a crisis that literally shuts down the operation, and no one knows what happened, and no one knows how to prevent it from happening again, and you're having to hire all these outside people because your organization fell on its face. And at this critical moment, instead of sticking around and leading your organization through it and reforming whatever it is that needs to be reformed, you're on one of those Kathy Lee cruises. I have a problem with that.
Mr. Powers, I want to ask you, in light of the 2019 outage, the 2 system-wide outages within 4 months, including Fridays, and the Transbay Tube incident, what does accountability look like here? Should somebody be fired, and who?
I appreciate you asking the question. I will ask that staff connect with you to answer that.
Why won't you just answer it?
You know what's funny? That was the trick that Kamala Harris used when she was a local politician in California. I knew people that covered her races, and whenever they asked her a question, the answer was always, my staff will get back to you with an answer. And then they never would. And she was able to use that trick to get through local races in San Francisco, statewide races for attorney general, federal races for United States Senate, and it never stung her until she became the Democratic nominee.
If you were curious, Robert M. Powers, the general manager of BART, makes, with salary and benefits, a combined total of at least $500,000 a year to refuse to answer questions.
Good job.
I'm not looking.
Gee, I wonder why BART went broke.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
I'm not looking to get into a back and forth here at the dais.
I hope that we can speak with you afterwards. Thank you so much.
But we couldn't. Instead, speaking with a BART
Okay,
spokesperson.
this is the crowd that talks about transparency. This is the crowd that talks about democracy. This is the crowd that talks about Trump being an authoritarian. They screw something up. Nobody gets fired, and they refuse to answer questions and act like you're out of line for asking them.
But we couldn't. Instead, speaking with a BART spokesperson.
He asked me to make sure to come out and answer your questions. Why not?
He's afraid.
Oh, great. They sent out the intern.
Robert Powers doesn't seem very powerful when he sends out his assistant to talk to Channel 7.
Oh, yeah. Let's send out some millennial that's named after a Western state. I can't answer those questions, but Montana will be free to talk to you after the meeting's over and all the important people leave.
Why not talk to us? We've been.
If BART really needs a sales tax increase, if they really need a bond, let's open up the books. Let's see where all the money's going.
Oh, they won't let you do that.
Why not talk to us? We've been trying to talk to him for some time now.
He is running a board meeting today. It's also my responsibility to communicate to the reporters, so he asked me to make sure that I...
Okay, so there's yet another job where we have a wasted salary.
Yeah, she needs to be in the unemployment line.
We have a director of BART that refuses to talk to the media, so he hires an assistant to explain to the media why we can't talk to you.
And that's democracy.
Reporters, so he asked me to make sure that I came out here and answered all your questions.
But you didn't answer the question.
No, you just said we'll get back to you. So you're going to have your underling send an email to the reporter after the story goes away.
Should somebody be fired, and who?
Well, that's not for me to say.
So the guy who makes the decisions is too busy, and I'm here to answer all your questions. Here's the questions. Well, I'm not the one to answer that. Are you kidding? That's above my pay grade.
Gee, what happened to this agency?
Well, that's not for me to say.
With further pressing.
I can tell you, no one has been fired. I don't believe there's a plan to fire anyone.
So accountability means nothing.
But she's just guessing. She knows the culture of that organization, so she feels comfortable stating that, but she's not the one that makes those decisions.
Our efforts to get answers catching Director Lee's attention.
I am also deeply concerned that media has come to board meetings to make public comment, to have questions answered.
We failed. Simply put, we failed.
So who's getting fired?
No one, of course.
In the future, BART executives saying they will communicate to the board and public that scheduled work is going to happen. They'll also conduct the work on weekends instead of weekdays and contain the areas they're going to work on.
Yeah, whose bright idea was it to make this cable switch on a Friday?
Some dummy.
Someone who also didn't get fired.
It's been 1 week since we first asked to speak with BART General Manager Robert Powers. I asked again today, as you heard, and I'll ask again tomorrow. We'll keep asking and keeping you posted.
This story, by the way, it ran on ABC7 on Friday. They still haven't gotten back to her.
Of course, because there are no good answers.
With all due respect to Alicia Trost, who does a very good job in working with the media, one would think that given that taxpayer money is used to fund BART, that the head of the organization might want to come out and appear himself to say what went on. That's a separate issue. But on the communication with all of the riders that day, some said they didn't get an alert until hours later. What happened there?
All right, so BART says that they did reach out to 511 to send out that Nixle alert, but for whatever reason, it did not get sent out right away.
For whatever reason.
Anyone get fired over that one?
Oh, that person was on vacation too.
You know, they've got this system where they send a massive alert on my phone every time a dementia patient walks outside of the nursing home with a silver alert, but they can't send an alert to let everyone in the Bay know that, hey, BART shut down.
They're working on it, and they promise accountability.
If you sign up, however, for BART alerts, you would have been notified at 5 a.m. And I do want to say, since you mentioned Alicia, she said she will pass on that request to Robert Powers, but that it's up to him ultimately whether or not he wants to speak with us. And I will keep putting in that request every day.
Yet another public official who refuses to be transparent about what they do.
And they can get away with it because it's a one-party state and they control everything. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222.
I had a whole thing I wanted to set up here, and now I can't because you weren't available for me to tell you the thing I needed to set you up for.
Uh-oh. Well, if you want to see Randy yell at me in person, you can do that tomorrow in the Valley.
We're going to be at Pineapple Hill in Sherman Oaks. Here, I'm just going to tell you. Tell me we have an update on Jimmy Kimmel.
We have an update on Jimmy Kimmel.
Just for anybody that thinks that the radio station Talk Radio 790 KABC is affiliated anyway with ABC Television or Disney, please, please, please stop calling our call screener Kelly and blaming her personally for canceling Jimmy Kimmel.
Wait, we're getting blamed for that?
They're not you, not me. They're personally blaming our call screener for suspending Jimmy Kimmel.
And they're happy or they're upset?
They are very upset.
Oh, well, just in case any of you are listening, for the moment, I'll be Rez. Ring, 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 ring. We're very upset that Jimmy Kimmel was put on ice. Well, I'm not. Don't like him, never have. He made his bed, and now he can sleep in it. Next question. You know, it's funny because I work for that company. I think you came here after Disney sold us, correct?
I came here like 3 companies after that.
Okay. Working for the Walt Disney Company is a different animal than just about any other media company because they have a brand that they are possessive over. And if you do something to damage the brand of Mickey Mouse, they will take you to a desert island and leave you there until you die. They just operate differently than any other company I've ever worked for. And I've worked for some of the big ones. There was a moment in time, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. I interviewed one of the freeway killers from the prison. And the interview went about exactly as you would expect it to go. where he said that he actually killed more people than he was convicted of killing, and he went through and described some of those murders. I was doing a nighttime show at the time. It was a dark interview, but it shows you how you only catch them on a certain number of the crimes that they commit. So we aired the interview, and then he messages me and asks me afterwards for a transcript of it. Well, now with AI, that would be easy to do. But at the time, we didn't have a service that provided transcripts because, as it so happens, deaf people don't listen to the radio. So I said, I can't do that for you because it doesn't exist, but I'm happy to post the interview online, or I'm happy to send you a CD of the interview. And he said, well, there's no way for me to play that for the other inmates, and I want them to know that I'm a big deal on the outside. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I can't give you something that I don't have. And so what he did was, apparently in California, if you're economically destitute, you can have fees waived for you in the court system, and you can also represent yourself. So I got served with papers from this guy who claims that he maintained his good name until I started talking about him, and then I defamed him and ruined his reputation. He was a serial killer who was convicted by a judge and a jury and sentenced. And he believes that he maintained his good name until I started talking about him. And this paper that he sent the station had misspellings. It had things that you can't legally even do or say. It was totally ridiculous. And I thought it was funny. And I showed it to management. I showed it to other people. And oh boy, the Walt Disney Company did not think it was funny. You cannot talk about this. You cannot post this online. You cannot do it as a topic on the air. You're going to have to talk to attorneys. You're going to have to go to these meetings. They took it as a serious threat to their company. A joke lawsuit by a convicted serial killer. If you think for one moment, as an employee and a host for the Walt Disney Company, you can go out and opine on a subject as sensitive as a political assassination, say something that's not true, they then ask you to correct the record, you tell them to pound sand, that company doesn't respond well to that. I know that for a fact. So anyway, stop calling the 800 number. We have no control over what happens to Jimmy Kimmel. And if you're a big fan of the show, you should be happy that I have no control over Jimmy Kimmel. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be live in the San Fernando Valley tomorrow starting at noon right here on The John Phillips Show.